What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Orthodox Squad podcast. We are back with Sky. He has returned. Strahinja is here as well. He's back. Milos is here as always. And me. But today we have a special guest, Father Jonathan. Welcome to the podcast. Before we start, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, if you've always been Orthodox, your jurisdiction, etc.?
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity to spend some time with all of you. My name is Father Jonathan. I serve a church out here in Rockford, Illinois, 72 miles west of Chicago in the American Carpatho-Russian diocese. Grew up in this diocese in Connecticut. Studied painting and have a degree in art education, K through 12, out in Connecticut. And basically, I've been serving here for 10 years, and my wife, she's from the Greek Archdiocese, though her Orthodoxy is from Lebanon, and she teaches in the local high school, so we've really been in the community for some time. I've got a 3-year-old, we have a 3-year-old and 7 sons, and it's been amazing, really, to see how people have found the faith out here. We had 25 people on a Sunday 10 years ago, and just last Sunday we had 75. 9 years ago we had one person convert, and then the next year 2 people, then the next year 6 people, and then 22 people in 2 years, and right now there's 24 inquirers, and that's even growing just since last week with a gentleman who lives down the street from Congo. And so, yeah, it's been a joy, really, to get to be a priest and be in this community.
Oh, wow. Do you think internet has played a part in that for people inquiring?
Yes, I think the internet certainly allows for many varied resources to be available in seconds. Our libraries here in this country often don't really have many Orthodox options. You go to Barnes and Noble, and it's either the Philokalia, honestly, or nothing. That's quite a place to dive in. So, yeah, I would say, between all the online ministries, I shouldn't say even, but even the Orthodox meme squad, I hear from young adults in our parish talk about
Oh, wow.
how come to the faith. Yeah.
That's great to hear. I love
But
that. And yeah, this is the reason why we do it. Honestly, this is the reason why we have the podcast, for people that are inquiring into Orthodoxy or looking into the faith, but also creator Orthodox that are rediscovering the faith. So it's honestly a blessing to have so many inquirers in church, and it's great to see as someone who's creator Orthodox. I hope it continues growing over the years. So normally I throw Yogurt or Bryce in front of the bus with questions, the first question, but this time I'm gonna do Sky because he's the next American in line. So for you, the question before we start: what is and why, or what is the significance of icons in Orthodoxy?
Oh, for me? Oh, okay.
For you, that's for you.
Well, I mean, I've heard the expression like icon, like even my church's iconography, like my church's store, is called Windows to Heaven, because it's like almost like it is like a window. It's like this glass pane, and on the other side, you are like by venerating that icon, it's almost like paying respect to that saint, almost like Christ in that saint, And that's the way I've heard it. I've heard it coined and said. So that's the importance of icons. Almost like it's also a way of like remembering. It's a way of they've always been in the church from like the very beginning. They've always you can see kind of like, I guess, even in the Old Testament you can see how amazingly decorated even the temple was with the like even like forms, I guess, of like Old Testament iconography on in the within the
The
inside
cherubs.
yeah, and the cherubs and everything, and you can kind of see that iconography from the very beginning, and how it's like been almost like how it's been continued throughout the years, and how everything kind of has a meaning with that in iconography. I remember seeing an icon. It was actually last week, and it was I can't remember the icon, but I remember what I said to my friend. I looked at this icon, and I looked at my friend, and I said, "Do you have any idea how much Orthodox theology is just in this one icon?" It was I can vaguely remember.
Which icon?
I don't remember the icon at all. I can't remember the icon, but I remember saying that to my friend, and he was like, and he said, "Yeah, well, there's theology. If you look at every icon, you can see theology in every icon, in almost every icon, and stuff like that." And I remember saying that, and just the amount of theology that you can just gain from just looking from just an image, almost like that icon, and how much it can tell you about your faith just from that image. And that's the importance of icons that I see. So that's my answer to the question. So
Very good. Thank you. Do you happen to know the first, well, Orthodox iconographer in history? It's a trick question. It's easier than you think.
I'm gonna go out
Well, not that easy. Maybe it's fine now.
I
Saint Luke.
Saint Luke. Yep,
Saint
I've
Luke.
heard that. He was the one.
Yes.
I think he did an icon of the Theotokos, right?
Yes, very true.
That's what I
Very
heard.
true.
He was the one that did an icon of the Theotokos.
That will be in our thumbnail, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Anyway, which you haven't seen, that's why you couldn't answer this question. But
Okay.
it's okay.
Okay.
Father, do you have anything to add to his explanation?
It was a beautiful explanation, Sky.
Thank you.
This opening of theology for every age, right? You have this expression of heaven, the colors, right, and the face, and the tangibility and approachability of our God. And we can read faces, right, so easily, so well, especially children. And if we have infant baptisms, then we surely recognize that they're full members of the church from that youth. And so to make the faith accessible to them with the icons is incredibly important. And so much of it is there. We were talking about the colors. Yeah, so I would just say I just agree and support what Sky had to say.
Great. There's so much to iconography, but let us tackle first why it's not heretical. You know, we've already been through this in Byzantine times with iconoclasm, but a lot of Protestants that are probably watching are thinking, wait, but this is all heresy. We shouldn't make any graven images, if you know what I mean. You've probably seen it enough on the internet and maybe in real life as well. Could you maybe tell us why or what the difference is between veneration and worship? Maybe Milos can.
One before going to that, one very easy thing is how to dispute the Protestants is by going to the history. Sky already mentioned it. Like if we go back to into even before the coming of Christ, we had in the temples the icons, and after his coming, like you mentioned already, Saint Luke, how he made an icon of the Theotokos, and with that history already, and the logical thinking, it should be proof enough in that case, because you can clearly see there is this continuous line where we used icons in the church and during worship.
Yeah, I agree. And the difference between veneration basically is that we don't worship that piece of wood. It's basically the same as like you don't worship the photograph of your, let's say, your father that you have above your TV. You don't worship that piece of paper. You venerate them. You honor the person in the picture, and in our case, the icons. You know, we kiss them as we enter into the church or pray, as to show that they're still part of our church family. That's why we kiss them. At least that was explained to me. And sometimes you see people kissing their family members that have passed away on pictures as well. It's basically the same thing. And we don't worship that piece of wood or piece of paper. It's a big difference between veneration and worship. Did I explain that well, Father?
Beautifully stated. I really appreciate the example there of how we greet each other. And if we defend that where God is present, the kingdom is manifest, right? With the beginning of the liturgy and how we're in kairos, right? Not chronos. So we're in the same quality of time, and believe in a single story Christianity, not a two-tiered system where St. Peter's up here and those who have died are up here, but the angels, the heavenly worship is present where God is. And so I really appreciate that, how you'd greet a friend and then you would greet those, and the icons are making visible the invisible presence. And it's also scripturally founded. The word is latria, right? For worship, veneration, or worship due to God alone. And proskinesis would be the honor and the veneration. So we can see how that's applied in scripture and how there's a difference. But in English, I mean, we have worship and veneration just because of the mode, the act of the kissing and the bow, I think is where some Protestants may think, well, clearly we're worshiping the Mother of God, when really any honor due to her is hinged upon her relationship with Christ.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Can I tell a quick story about, because we are on
Yes.
the topic of Protestants? So if any Protestants are watching, I have this beautiful story of Saint John of Damascus that fits really well. So during the time of iconoclasm, when he wrote the letters to the Byzantine emperor, how it is wrong to forbid icons.
Maybe it's good to explain what iconoclasm was first. Should I do that?
Yeah, you do that.
All right. So iconoclasm was basically a period in time in the church where a lot of people and the Byzantine emperor wanted to ban icons, any images of saints, Christ in the church. They even had the image of Christ's face, or the icon of Christ, above the gate entering Constantinople removed. Like, it was like a pre-Protestantism movement. A lot of Protestants don't know we had these movements already, and we tackled these heresies already. But that's basically what iconoclasm is. It was a movement to remove icons in church tradition. Continue.
But how did they come to that conclusion to do that? Because I couldn't think of that. I couldn't remember it.
The Seventh Ecumenical Council? That's when they all came
Yeah,
together.
but what was the reasoning behind that? I know it happened at that time, but I forgot about what was the reasoning. How they came
The
to that
commandment.
conclusion.
It was literally the wrong interpretation of the commandment, like Protestants do nowadays. You know the commandment, you shall not make idols or any graven images. It was basically the same thing.
All right, I wasn't sure of that.
Maybe the father could explain what that commandment actually means.
When you have, at the time of that commandment, we had Christ was not yet incarnate, right? So you have this idea, or not idea, you have a commandment of not setting anything up and worshiping it as God in place of God. And once he made himself depictable, it would be natural to, I guess you could say, depict him, because now we have God taking on matter, and matter will be in the age to come, right? He has the resurrected flesh. And so when you look at the canon that came from the Seventh Ecumenical Council, it doesn't only promulgate that an image is okay, a very specific image, one that depicts both natures, right? It's a fundamental principle of iconography, that both the divine and human nature will be manifest in some capacity with the visual rhetoric or the language that the icon employs. And even then, we don't worship them, right? We don't worship the icon.
Exactly. And a few verses after the commandments in Exodus 25:17-22, God literally instructs the Israelites or Hebrews, the Jews, to make 2 cherubs unto the ark of the covenant. So he literally commands the people to make, icons of the cherubs, like we do in our church nowadays as well, on the holy ark of the covenant. Like it's like Protestants cherry pick, I don't blame them because they're being brought up with these ideas of sola, anything sola, and no graven images, make your churches bald, bald walls, etc. But literally read your Bible; it's all there.
I didn't
We are the
realize.
yeah.
Oh,
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the white walls isn't, in many Protestant churches, isn't simply missing theology as we have it depicted in iconography, but it's a deliberate, intentional theology. Their walls will be white, not we just
Yes.
happen to. And it was really something to hear that from a family that joined our faith that was formerly Calvinist.
Mm-hmm. It reflects the spiritual theology, in my opinion. It's really empty, in my opinion. Well, Sky, you come from a Protestant background, right?
Yeah, but I came from a Baptist, not a Calvinist. So there's
Ah,
even within Protestantism, there's like a bunch of different roots. So it's like
yeah.
I came from a background that was like a mega church. So our theology was found in laser lights and fog machines. Our incense was fog machines and our candles were lasers. So that's all I could say about that.
So they were concerts basically.
Yeah, now look at me. I help my church make incense. We like make some of the incense and stuff like that. So that's pretty awesome. So I love that. So.
Yeah. Father, before we continue, could you tell us a little bit about the icons in your background?
Sure, sure. So we have Saint Euphrosynos here holding the branch of apples. He's the common patron of cooking, and I'm sure many Orthodox kitchens will have him. A great example of humility, as all of his brotherhood made fun of him, right? And
Mm-hmm.
sort of on the position, and he endured it prayerfully, and then uh, we know that he enjoyed walking through paradise, and that. And this is actually the work of Konstantinos Yanakis in Greece. He's going to be offering iconography for the walls of our church. We just plastered them and painted them. We've been really looking forward to this. We color match the
Oh
blue
wow.
Athonite monks who painted in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, what's the name of that color at the local department store but Poseidon blue, right?
Yes.
And then over here we have an image of the Theotokos with Christ. This was a gift from the nuns in Meteora, where the
Oh,
relics of Saint Harlan.
I've been
I had a
there.
chance. Yeah, I had a chance to visit them a number of years ago, and I'm learning it doesn't hurt to ask, right? So
Mm-hmm.
have a sent a message, and we needed some icons for our narthex. And when I was there, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I bought a little icon. It was printed on canvas, and I said, surely they must have the source file. If this was printed, why don't I ask if they can print something a little bigger?
Big. Mm-hmm.
And not only did they print this icon, they printed St. Harlalambos, St. Stephen, and they said, we don't charge priests. And I was like,
Oh, oh wow, that's amazing. I love monastics. They're great people. Very great. Could you maybe explain to us if a lot of people that want to have icons, especially like starting or inquiring Orthodox people, they usually don't have the funds to buy icons. Are printed icons through your computer also legit?
I think the best way for me to answer that would be with maybe two stories. Do we have time for two short stories?
Yes.
Okay.
We have time.
So I believe the elder of Vatopedi had once met a hermit on Mount Athos who had gone into a cave that was at one time inhabited by another monk who had passed away. And he found, many things worn away from rainwater. And he saw this little icon of, I believe, Archangel Michael. And it was sort of, it was printed and it had missing some pieces, and he put it up somewhere in a place of honor. And then later that night, we have to remember he lived alone. He heard someone sensing in his church and in the chapel there. When he goes in, he sees the archangel, and he said, "Because you honored me, I came to honor you."
Oh wow.
And I think there's other stories as well of having a particular paper or printed icon. Even stories where you have a miraculous icon that gets stolen from an opposing group, and then they say, okay, we have the replica. Well, the people who stole it, that stopped weeping, and the replica began to weep.
Oh wow.
Right? So we see that, I guess you can't steal holiness.
No, I think that answers the question very, very good. So yes, it's possible. Yeah, maybe you could talk a little about the miracles and icons, because a lot of people see these Facebook posts about another icon crying, blood even sometimes, or mirror. But what is the meaning of these events?
Well, I mean, that's a rich question that I think Orthodoxy feels confident and comfortable staying in the walls of mystery,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes mystery revealed, much like the paradox that is Christ. But I would say that we are always cautious as to why these things happen, and if they do happen. But sometimes it's just part of the story. Again, at Vatopedi, where they have like 9 miraculous icons in their monastery since the 900s, right? Long time to have
Mm-hmm.
a broken chain of monasticism, all these centuries. And you have this this cellar where they keep the olive oil. And one of the stories was people would come asking for it during hard times, and they only had so much left. And one of the monks, I think, was going to keep some back. And I think the abbot at the time said, "Give it all away." And then they go into the cellar where the oil was, and everything's overflowing. The Panagia took care of it. And so the icon in that cellar becomes the miraculous icon of that act. You have other ones where they were damaged and started to bleed, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a bayonet cut to the face, and yeah, sometimes it's a fragrance. I think that we would say that there's maybe a need or a care or a reminder, that we aren't alone. Perhaps faith is in a difficult position, and we're being reminded with something.
Mm-hmm.
I see that it can help with different situations. Yeah.
Well, they're so powerful. When you go to churches, in very old churches in Greece, like churches from the medieval times, you see that the eyes are carved out from icons. I don't know if you've been to a monastery or a church that had that, Father, but the Turks used to scratch out the eyes of the icons because they were afraid because they felt like they were watching them doing the atrocities. So that's the power of icons. I don't know if that happened in Serbia too under the Turks.
Yes,
Yes.
especially in Kosovo. Monasteries, if you visit ever, you will see that a lot of places, most monasteries in Kosovo will have the eyes of the icons carved out. It
Is that
was
for the same
precisely the
reason?
Turks who did it. Yes.
Yeah, and they left it that way, but it gives you a kind of like spiritual experience. It's amazing. Some icons. Strahinja, now that you talked, what
Yes.
is your favorite icon?
Well, I think that I most like this icon that is behind me because it was given to me by my grandmother. I
Can you grab
can
it?
send yeah, of course. I can send a picture maybe to Sky later so he can edit it in
Okay.
to have a nice image because my camera quality is not the best here.
Which
And
one is it?
it is the angel.
Start over. What is your? All right, wait. Strahinja, what is your favorite icon?
Of course, my favorite icon would be one of the two icons that are behind me because they were given to me by my grandmother, and I remember them hanging on my wall since I can remember when I was a kid, and just seeing those icons every day, had definitely like an impact on me. It's just images that I love seeing because they really remind me of my childhood. I would also say and encourage people to look up any icon painted by the Russian icon painter Andrei Rublev. I think his work is really beautiful, and I would definitely encourage people to check out the fresks behind him. I will send an image to Sky so in post
Well,
he
what
can.
is it of exactly?
So it is the Virgin being announced that she will be
Annunciation.
with Christ by the angel.
Mhm.
And so
Uh-huh.
I don't know who originally painted that icon. This version is printed on wood. It is not a hand painted icon, but it was just owned by my grandmother, and she gave it to me when I was moving away. So now it's on my wall here.
Beautiful.
And yes,
Beautiful. Milos, what is your favorite?
My favorite icon. 1 second.
Oh, you got it?
Is this one? I got it. It was a present from my priest. It's the icon of Christ.
Mhm.
And my priest wrote on it as well with his blessings.
Beautiful.
So it has also emotional value. Can I say it like that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sentimental.
That wasn't
There we go.
sentimental.
There we go.
Thank you. Thank God we have American converts to correct my English.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You can never go wrong. And by the way, Milos made a short how to make a basic icon corner. So if you want to look at that, you can
Check it
look it
out.
up in our shorts.
By the way,
Thank you,
I
Milos.
forgot to mention in that shorts, you don't need as many icons I have. I got a lot of gifts. That's why I have that many icons. I
Yes.
constantly get gifts from other parish members.
And here I thought Milos was just rich.
No, I'm not rich, I'm poor.
Sky, what's yours?
I actually have two icons here. Well,
All right.
one was this was actually gifted to me by one of my Protestant friends, Hunter. It was given. An icon was given to me by a Protestant. Yes, and he gave it to me as a gift for my baptism, and this is the baptism of Christ right here. So,
Which portrays the Holy Trinity.
yes. So back to the whole thing on theology and icons. This is a perfect example of theology and icons. Like an amazing example of theology and beautiful. And then I have an icon that was given to me by my sponsor, and it is of my patron saint, Saint John of
Oh.
Damascus.
That one is shiny.
Yeah, shiny. And
It's beautiful.
this is given to me by my sponsor, George, and it is of my patron saint, St. John of Damascus, which Milos was going to tell a story about earlier, but he never got around to it, so I was hoping this could remind him of that story. So, yeah, there you go.
You want me to tell the story, or do you want to sell it because he's your patron saint?
No, it's all you. You probably know it better than me.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna tell it, but then he stopped. I was like, all right.
Oh,
There you go.
that's just because it's late and my brain stops working for me sometimes during this time. So, yeah, during the
Wait.
time of
Let me ask the father before we start in your story. Father, what is your favorite icon?
Oh, it's really any of the styles like Saint Euphrosinos here that are very open.
Mm-hmm.
Pancilios styles and the Protaton on Monathos. Any of those that certain ones of Saint Sophrony and some of the recent Romanian communist the prisoners of communism. There's certain
Mm-hmm.
icons made of them that are very open and gentle, and yet at the same time strong, like these images. It's very beautiful. So
Indeed. Well, for me, I like icons that are very busy because I have ADHD, so I like to look at a lot of things. And I saw this huge icon, which is like huge, and it had so many scenes and all of that. I don't remember the name, but one of my favorite ones, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's the icon of creation, mainly the animals. Sky I can send you the picture later. But it's absolutely, you can see the sun, the moon, the animals being created, the sea. It just portrays like a beauty that we can see all around us on Earth, and I think that reflects the icon very well. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention real quick. I actually remember that icon reminded me of the icon that I said that I referenced in the very beginning, where I said there's so much theology in this icon, and it was an icon of the creation of Adam, and that's the icon that it was. I'll put it up on the screen, but that's the icon that I saw, and it was of the creation of Adam, and that's when I showed it to my friend, and I said, "Do you know how much theology is in this icon?" Like I could give you a few lines from the creed that are that are that you can see in this icon,
Mm-hmm.
and I was
Yeah,
baffled by it.
because
It's
because
amazing.
they're gateways to heaven. And another function of the icon was also, a lot of people in medieval times were not able to read, so they couldn't read scripture or couldn't read theological books. So icons were in a way of telling the story of Christ. They could have the story at home with these icons of like his ministry, his resurrection, his sacrifice. So it was a way of also teaching people about the gospels and the saints. And that's why we still have saints and icons of saints that have like slept like 1,000 years ago, passed away, and we still know how the icons look like. It's like a very long tradition that goes back thousands of years. So, Father, oh wait, Milos, it's your time to tell the story. Go ahead.
oh yeah, real quick, the story of Saint John of Damascus. So during the time of iconoclasm, he wrote to the Byzantine emperor letters how it wasn't good what he was doing to forbid icons in church and everywhere. And the emperor was very upset by those letters because the emperor was like, how dare he oppose me with my opinions? So he told the caliphate, under which Damascus was under back in that day, that Saint John of Damascus is trying to form a rebellion. So as a punishment, the caliphate cut his arm off. And Saint John of the Damascus, he prayed in front of the icon of the Theotokos with his left hand because his right hand was cut off. And during the night when he was sleeping, his hand got stitched together like it got back on his hand again. and he could see on his arm where it was cut a fine red line.
Mm-hmm.
And after the Caliphate saw that, he was like, this man must be an innocent man if his hand came back to him after being cut, because this is a miracle.
Yeah,
Even the
beautiful
Caliphate
story.
saw that the icon of the Theotokos performed that miracle.
Very beautiful. Thank you. Father, do you know how to write icons?
I've studied it. I have some materials at home, and so in some ways, yes, I would say, but the actual process of sitting down, I'm looking forward to my 3-year-old attending school this September, so then I can really dive into it. I studied in England last spring with Aiden Hart and a few other places to really explore the techniques more. It's very beautiful. It's really, really something. Did you want to talk a little bit about the process?
Yeah. I'm really curious because I see these videos on YouTube, like very short videos, like they're sped up and how to make an icon or how to write an icon, but I've never dived deep into the process. So if you could, that'd be amazing.
There's quite a few different ways, and that's a reason Aiden Hart actually authored his book Techniques, so we don't say there's only one, right? There's many ways, and so you could start with what's considered to be like a monochromatic, so a singular color building up a form with a dry brush technique, right? Think of like a grayscale with charcoal, sort of, moving some of that out and getting some highlights. And so say it's like a burnt umber, you're using like a brown to do all that, and then you layer it with a wash of purple, or pick your color. It dials back all of that underbrush and makes it look like it was the color you washed it with. So it's like building up your with cross hatching and then putting a color on it, and then it looks like you've painted multiple layers or wrote multiple layers. The other technique is you've got a brush with a very large belly, and that means it can hold quite a bit of paint. So it's loaded, and you sort of erratically move it around. And it's almost like a marbling, perhaps, but you have sort of like these different values and hues of blue for the Virgin Mary's garment, for example. And then that's your base coat. Everything after that will be a tint, because you're building light upon light, right? So you add a little more white to that blue, and then you start creating form with light, which really drives home how the icon is trying to show, at least for Christ, not just the anthropos, man, but the theanthropos, right? The God man, where you have the light dwelling now within the human person. And so unlike the Renaissance Caravaggio, where you have like on me right here with this direct light source.
Yeah, clarobscur, right?
Chiaroscuro, that kind of
yes.
this very strong light here. Instead, it's like when you blow on a charcoal that's lit. Any altar servers here will know.
Yeah.
You sort of see the orange glow come from within. Right?
Yep.
So the Orthodox theology there is taking an act on Mount Tabor and placing it within the human heart, the closeness of God. And so it's all intentional, which is unfortunate why sometimes these things are looked at as naive. I've taken enough art history classes to see that at times in a Western view, if it doesn't look like Michelangelo, then it's fallen short, and they were trying to, and they couldn't reach that high, right? If it doesn't look like Leonardo, and I thought it was fascinating, Aiden Hart was actually in a recent text of his, he says abstraction in the icons are more realistic than naturalistic work, which limits itself to physical realities, right? Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci. You have rational perspective, a vanishing point in the background, and then you also have an Italian landscape.
Yes.
Where the mystical supper in an Orthodox church, and you're a participant, which is another reason why the eyes are cut out. The icons aren't religious imagery; it's liturgical art, right? It's a form of art. And so you can't, I don't want to say you can't interact with it, but once the eyes are cut out, that participation is sort of broken.
Oh yeah.
Which is, whenever you go to a museum, an art museum, and you see those marble statues, and it looks like the noses are all broken off. I used to think that's because, they're hundreds of years old and they fell over and X, Y, Z. It was actually an intentional damaging because they thought that if they broke the nose, whatever this thing can't do it anymore.
Uh-huh.
So if you take out the eyes of an icon, it's almost as though you were painting over it with primer. You're cutting back a layer of its process and interaction.
Exactly. And that's why the Turks as well plastered most of it. Like they plastered on it instead of destroying the whole icon, because they knew they had it. Like they knew it was something.
I just wanted to say something real quick. This is a side note. This is just another technical thing. Strahinja, I'm just receiving a little bit of feedback from your end.
Okay.
I don't know what it was, whether it's from like something echoing off the back of something, but I just want to let you know so that way.
Okay.
Maybe turn down the sound a little bit.
I'll go headphone here.
All right.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for the explanation, Father. Do you have any tips for people that want to start with iconography?
Sure. I would say, prayerfully. I would begin with prayer. And then I was going to say, jump right in. But begin with prayer, get a sketchbook, start with monumental images. What does that mean? Images that are very open, images that are on the walls of, the churches of Serbia, the monasteries of Mount Athos and throughout the world. Very, very well done images. And also get some acetate, thin plastic, put it over them, and try to get and enter, how did they go from thin to thick to thin? How did they sort of, there are techniques. Your 5 eyes wide, the lips line up with the pupils, you do all of that, and you're going to say, oh, now it looks like an icon, right? The stem of the nose, the bulb and the arch, and the eye being in the center of a halo. These are all techniques. And it's just like learning how to type in some ways. It's very difficult at first, but then you get into a rhythm and you learn. So I would just say it's really something that can be part of, if you are interested, it can become part of your prayer life. It's
sure.
really
And that's mainly the Byzantine tradition, right? Because we have also different types of iconographical styles. For example, the Russian, the newer, it's newer, but it's a different kind of style, right?
Yes, there's many styles and approaches. If you're able to find someone whose work you trust and whose teachability you feel comfortable with, I would say and encourage, take a class, go to England, and really just be a sponge and take it in and see how that goes for you.
Because I see your church mainly has Byzantine, even though it's a originally Slavic church, right?
Well, those would be the items that were either given or we're preparing for the wall. But we do have some. Well, I could show you the deacon doors if I brought it over, but there's certain expressions from that are a bit more, I don't want to say Western, but there's some what was available in the 1950s, one could say.
Oh yeah, and I'm pretty sure the newer Russian style was influenced by Western art as well.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's
'Cause they had
beautiful.
like, yeah, it's beautiful, but I think they had some Catholic influences at the time, and then the new style arose after the Byzantine one. But honestly, I'm not complaining. I think it looks beautiful, and I think it's very important to have different styles that suit the tradition in the country. Yeah.
I wanted to just show you some variations and styles that I have. That's why I just turned off my camera to go Renegade Icons. This
Ah.
is one of the styles. This is very, very Russian. Literally in Russian on the back. Can't read this. Can't understand this. But-
It's in Russian, but the technique is still Byzantine.
And then I have this other one right here.
Yeah, that's more Russian.
Yeah, this is
I
way
think.
more Russian. But even I know, like, I think it was my priest that said that there's a difference in, like, I think Russians tend to be lighter shades or darker. I get them mixed up.
I think
One of-
lighter.
One of them tends to use lighter shades, whereas the Greek will use the opposite. And then,
Darker, yeah.
Yeah, darker. And then back to the Mystical Supper, I have one right here, and this is of the Last Supper right here. And then there we all go.
Yeah. So much meaning in that one as well.
Especially this one. There we go. I just wanted to show off those ones.
You know, one of my other favorites is the one of Judas, where he leaves the room and his halo stays behind. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, Father, but it's like what could have been, but he
Mm.
chose to betray Christ. I'm pretty sure Sky will show a picture of that in the edit.
Yeah, I was gonna
But-
say even on this one, you can see all of them have halos except Judas right here.
Yeah, and there's one
And he's
one
reaching
specifically.
across. But I'll have to find that one to put it in the post.
Yeah, it's like one specifically. I think it's a church in Greece that have all the apostles and the halo of Judas, but it's empty because you see Judas leaving the room.
Sky, can you bring that Last Supper image really close? I'd like to see if Judas is in profile, where you only see one eye. Yeah, look, can you tell us, is he in profile? Yes. So that's another technique too, that's reserved for often Judas and Satan. Sometimes the canon or the rule is broken.
Oh.
A saint receiving communion. But yeah, it's usually reserved because the icons are always showing an openness and a presence, a
Mhm.
presence of the saints.
And the icon of Christ, the Pantocrator from Egypt, from Sinai, it's one of the first depictions of Christ, and that one even shows the two natures of Christ in his icon, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's just so much. There's so many icons. I invite all of you who are watching to explore so many different kinds, that are out there. Especially look around in your church. You know, my church is already full of icons on the walls because they did that in the 60s. And it just tells the whole story of Christ, like, and Saint Nicholas. It's so beautiful. And I can just, my ADHD in church is very bad because it's I see images everywhere. So I keep looking all around me to see what's on the icons. But honestly, it's not a bad distraction. Because I'm still busy with the faith while I'm looking. And I
That's
feel like
another-
in Protestant churches, I would just think about other stuff.
Yeah, there is a sorry. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting. There is an icon style I would like to talk about that's very often forgotten. During the Ottoman invasion of the Balkans, in the medieval times, they developed a very particular art style icon style in Serbia that very few people know about, and those icons are really rare to see because there is very few of them that are preserved. But the iconographers will definitely be influenced by Eastern art styles, and there are many icons like that. One I recall, one that's kept in a church in Belgrade. It's actually kept in a chapel in the old cemetery in Belgrade. is an icon of Saint John the Baptist, and usually all lighter colors and kind of just completely different style, completely different writing style than what you might expect from more common maybe Russian icons that influenced Serbian icon painters later on. But I definitely encourage Balkan Orthodox people who are used to seeing icons to try, and maybe we can even put an image here on screen of what I'm talking about, because it's a very hidden art style, very hidden icon style to discover, and it is really beautiful and really interesting, because most of the times those writers, those monks who were painting those icons were risking their lives doing it, and I feel like that style should also be recognized.
I'm
I'm
gonna
very
take.
curious now.
Well, I wanted to say
gonna-
something. I also believe that there's a Father Jonathan. You've been to the UK, and I believe that there is also like a Celtic style that's predominant, and I think it's Mull Monastery. I know somebody that went there,
Yeah,
and it was like
I,
this Celtic style there.
would that be in the recent imagery and iconography that they had just put up, would you say?
Yeah, and it's like this, like with like darker tones and everything. I've seen pictures of their icons that they sell and stuff.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I'd have to, I believe I saw them. I have not studied the Celtic expression of iconography, so I'll have to see what school that what that comes from, because it is unique. It
Mhm.
looks like colors are limited. I'm sure with great intention.
Uh,
So
I wanna, before we end the podcast, I wanna ask you if you know some good resources to buy icons, because a lot of people ask me where should I buy icons, especially in North America. Do you have any good suggestions?
sure. Well, I mean, are we talking like a store where they're going to be shipped from our country?
Store or like, I don't know, some people maybe Etsy.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean Etsy. If you want to, got lots of really beautiful opportunities on Etsy. Um, I know. Can I say freely the names of some of the companies online?
Oh yes,
Okay.
yes.
I mean, you've got Uncut Mountain that has a number of opportunities. And I would just say, look to see what speaks to you, because
Hmm.
some images are either completely done or edited with some online graphic tools, and they're not actually from an original painting or iconography, or icon rather. So I would say, see what really speaks with the depth. And yeah, if you can find somebody who knows how to make them, that's
Yeah.
certainly an opportunity.
And I'd advise to look at your church store first if they sell some icons, because it's always good to support your local church, you know. Um, I want to ask, or I want to tell the viewers as well that they should avoid monastery icons. And I don't mean icons from monasteries. I mean the website called Monastery Icons. I don't know if you've heard about it, Father Jonathan, but they do
I know what
some weird, yeah, they do some weird Hindu rituals or pagan rituals with their icons that they make. And they make of Catholic saints as well. It's very confusing because they look like Orthodox, but they're not. I just want to put that out there. There's some articles online about that website, so definitely avoid that one. And if you bought already from that website, ask your priest what you should do with it. Um, yeah. Oh, that's actually interesting. What if an icon is so badly damaged? What do you do?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I'd have to understand the damage, right? If there was something that well, in some ways, there's an intention. We venerate them. They're there for us to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's missing paint, like on the deacon doors of our church. you can see where we had a deacon who served here for over 50 years, and you could see where the icon was kissed every time they went into the altar space. And but if it's damaged, I mean, you can talk to your priest and find out, you know, is there a time where you burn holy things, right? Sometimes these items get sent to Constantinople or wherever your respective jurisdiction prepares chrism, and they're used. Vestments are used to stoke the fires as the chrism and the oils are heated.
Oh wow.
So there's
Okay.
caring ways of caring for damaged iconography.
Okay. Thank you. I think a lot of people had that question. All right. Before we end the podcast, does anyone else have a question or?
Yeah, I wanted to say something real quick. I wanted just to show for the viewers quickly one art style that's two different art styles with the same saint. So I've got here Saint John the Baptist. It's another gift from my priest.
Byzantine? Yeah.
Yep. And now I got this very unique one. That's also from a monastery. It's carved out of wood.
Oh.
It's again Saint John the Baptist.
Is that Serbian style or something?
Yeah, that's it's in Serbian, and it's from a monastery in Serbia.
So the monastery has their own particular style, or like the iconographer.
Yeah, but basically they made a wood carvings. So out of that saint.
Okay. Yeah, you can also buy wood carvings. That's true. And statues. Like, I can see, Father, you have like little statues behind you, right?
Yep, that would be part of, I'd say, though they're in the round, it is a type of relief. But
Yeah.
yes, iconographic.
Because a lot of people think that we don't allow statues in Orthodoxy in general. But I know for a fact that there's a statue of Saint Sava, right? Before his church in Serbia.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So it's not totally not like not used. It's just not common in Orthodox churches to find statues like you find in Catholic churches. We prefer the icons.
Yeah. Also, Father, I just had a quick question regarding it's Carpatho-Russian, right? Carpatho-Russian jurisdiction. Could you give like a very short like explanation of what is the Carpatho-Russian jurisdiction?
Sure. So you have Orthodoxy, right, in the Slavic region from the 900s, Saint Cyril Methodius, and then over time, various reasons, there was.
I think it froze.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back. Yes.
You have that region, and at times, you know, when it's being taken over, or you have certain leaders saying everybody will be this particular religion, we became Byzantine Catholic from our home country. And so essentially, you know, Orthodoxy that honors the Pope. We're not talking about fully, you know, bring in the statues and bring in the Immaculate Conception and bring in all the Western theology, by no means. And so you have the first group of Carpathians come to our country, and there wasn't a self-preservation or let's preserve our identity. It was let's become Orthodox, and that was with Saint Alexis. That was with Saint Alexis Toth, right?
Yes.
So they joined the Metropolia, which was under the Russian diocese, and eventually became what's now known as the OCA. You have with a very strong Russian expression of the faith, but many of the founders were in fact Carpathians. So the second wave came over and saw this and said, well, we have our own 8 tones, right? It's interesting. We don't have a country, but we have our own tones. So let's preserve our traditions. And so in the 1930s, we said, okay, we're going to go and be Orthodox, because the Catholic bishops, the way they treated us, were less than equal. Oh, those married priests with beards, right? And that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Little by little, since the 30s, we've removed some external Catholic expressions, because ages ago you'd have the 33 buttons and a sash. I mean, when you're Byzantine Catholic for, a few hundred years, and eventually made to feel less than equal with your Catholic brethren, it's not surprising that we took on some of those externals. And so with each hierarch we've had, little by little, we've re-embraced Eastern expressions.
That was awesome because I personally I didn't know much about the Carpatho-Russian jurisdiction and all that. So I was that was just out of curiosity, and for I know a lot of our viewers might not know much about that whole history behind the
Oh,
jurisdiction.
it's hence why I made a video on them on my main channel. So I hope they get more recognition.
There
Well,
is something I wanted to add as well. I just didn't have time to say it during the podcast, because sometimes it's hard to interject. When the father was saying about the icon style, how it is often viewed in the West as primitive and like sort of backwards, there is this idea in academia that happened a few hundred years ago, where they saw a certain technological evolution in art, as in during the Renaissance times, painters became better. They became capable of producing realistic paintings, and there came this fallacy that space and depth was discovered in the Renaissance times. But when you look at oldest human pictures, even in caves from the prehistoric times, you can realize that those pictures actually show perspective. So the art endorsed by the church is just more than art. It is definitely the most intentional and definitely the holiest expression. And there is nothing random about it. It is very carefully chosen. And there is, maybe for some more secular viewers, there is so much depth and so much beauty inside icons, and like fresks and then painted icons on wood, and all these different styles we talked about that have their own rules, that I would really encourage people to just spend some time to look and admire the work of the Holy Fathers.
Do we have about 30 seconds to talk about some of that?
of course.
Yeah.
So when you look at the imagery here of St. Euphrosynos, and we think about how it was just mentioned, the space and some of the components that make up the Renaissance. But here, instead of the rational perspective going behind the person, iconography actually respects the medium, they say. It doesn't break this background panel, but converges in front to the viewer, making you the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it froze again.
Oh,
you're back.
So the way the image is rendered is causing the lines of perspective to converge in front of the panel, making the viewer, the participant, the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming out into our space, which is why St. Stephen the Younger wouldn't call iconography only a window, but a door, right? You can look through a window and not experience the rain you're seeing, but a door needs to be opened, and it is opened. Thank you, Christ. And so we have that presence. And I think it was Elder Emilianos of Simonos Petra who said, who before an icon doesn't feel the warmth of the presence, perhaps.
Exactly. Those are beautiful words to end it. Indeed, it is a door. Invites us for participation into the holiness of the Church in Christ. Thank you very much, Father, for joining us and making time to talk about this beautiful topic. Yeah, so we really appreciate it, right, guys?
Yeah,
Yes,
it was
thank you so much for
amazing to have
teaching
you on.
us.
Thank you.
You were a great guest, and I think we and all the viewers learned a lot in this recording session. You explained it
Yes.
very beautiful and simple. So even a person with limited English skills like me could very good follow you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I learned quite a bit from all of you in skyology, and it's
Thank you. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Catch you next week. We'll talk about masculinity. So catch you next week, guys. God bless.
Don't
See you
forget to
later.
like and subscribe and check out the life of the saints, like
Indeed.
Saint Porphyrius, Saint John of Damascus, and check out the life of Saint Saba, especially after he left this worldly world.
Exactly. I
happened
made
with
some
his
videos
body
on
and the
them.
miracles. I'm sorry for the long goodbye.
It's all right.
Check
Well,
out
It's
goodbye for
fresks
you.
of Andrei Rublev. If you haven't checked out any fresks or any monasteries, I strongly encourage to viewers.
Indeed. And get some icons. See you later, guys.